A mechanical engineer turned crypto trader turned content marketer, Sachin has always been inquisitive about various topics ranging from finance to technology. An avid researcher from a young age, he achieved early success. Oh, geez. Off to a good start, Sachin. He achieved early success in the construction sector in the Middle East. And in 2018, he deep dived into the crypto market and took a keen interest in charting and technical analysis. Today, he is the marketing manager and head of Center for Excellence at Goodman Lantern, a company that I also do some work for, a UK based B2B content creation company. Welcome, Session. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Megan. I am absolutely thrilled to be here as well. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction and really looking forward to this conversation.
Sure, me too. Could you maybe let's kick it off? I know that we have done well, let's just say I messed up the intro. So maybe
No, it's
you
all
could
right.
just run us through a couple of pointers about yourself, a brief overview of what it is that you do, how
Yeah,
you ended up doing it, and then how long you've been doing it, why you do it, etc.
yeah, sure. So, born and raised here in Kuwait, to an Indian household, very conservative Indian parents, as is an expected situation. So, I did my schooling in Kuwait. I did my university in Australia in Melbourne, actually. And then, after finishing my mechanical engineering, I got a scholarship actually to do a PhD, and that's actually where my content journey actually started. So I published 4 papers in fluid mechanics that were conference papers, which I presented in Singapore, South Korea, and also in Australia. So that was my first, let's say, encounter with content creation. And I always loved research, innovation, always like to question things, always was inquisitive, curious about the things that are going on around. So that is where sort of I thought, yes, I can probably get into the research field, which sort of laid the foundation of me asking the why in everything that I do, the why in everything that's happening around in the world, and even with like close friends and family. After that, so I didn't complete my PhD. I then ventured into my family business here in Kuwait, which was to do with construction. And I worked in that for about 10 years. Then in 2018, I got introduced to crypto and to Bitcoin, which may seem quite late because I was probably 10 years late. But yeah, everyone has their time when they get into, especially the crypto industry, or they get to hear about it. And then I immediately, obviously, like started asking questions, started to trying to understand what the crypto market was all about, and the way it has been set up, and what are the key features basically inside it. And I got into content creation in crypto, where I was doing content creation for myself and for other customers as well. And within 18 months, COVID hit, right? And we all went into lockdowns, you know, the whole story. And
Yeah, yeah.
that was a golden time for content creation, for marketing, especially in the crypto industry. And with the global and the local government policies that were there, a lot of people actually got into it, because you had obviously all the content that people were consuming suddenly just, let's say, was limited to their living rooms and to their rooms, to their homes, basically.
Mm, mm.
So that's where I also capitalized on that, got actively on to social media, and started doing a lot of different types of content creation, learned a lot of things online. And in the beginning of 2023, I was honored to be invited as the head of marketing for Goodman Lantern. And in May of this year, the CEO of the company decided that we need to innovate, we need to adapt to new market trends. So we developed a center for excellence, and I'm heading that as well. That's me in a
Sure.
nutshell.
It's like quite a CV you've got. And I hear you say that you're always interested in asking why. Why are things happening in the world? So why are things happening in the world? Why? That's that's probably like about 40 podcast episodes on its
That's
own.
true.
But
Well,
yeah,
I think more than that, especially if you inject religion into it, like why am I here? What's my existence? Going to do for the others. Yeah, that's going to be like 4,000 podcast episodes. But yeah,
yeah.
so I had a very I was actually quite lucky, and probably the people of my generation were also lucky in the sense if they were able to see what was actually happening. So I started off in construction in 2006, right? So that was a family business actually, but that was actually the time when there was literally free flowing money in the world, right? And you may think of places like Europe, places like the US, or places like China, where we are actually we get to read a lot in the mainstream media or the large publications about how banks were literally just throwing money on people. And you must have heard of ninja loans and things like that, where anyone
Mm-hmm.
who was an immigrant into these Western countries, they were without having any income, any background, any clearance, any credit checks, whatever, they were able to get home loans because we're supposed to realize this big dream of being homeowners. So, you know, it was a very similar thing in the Middle East as well. Very similar. There was absolutely free market, free money flow going on. And while I was a young engineer, I was able to actually secure a very large order for the company, which was worth millions of dollars for the renovation of a five-star hotel here locally. And I was not even 25 years old at that time. So,
Wow.
yeah. So the problem with that actually, it was so much, it was so wow at the time when it was happening. But after that, while that boom time was actually going on, everyone actually thought that whatever they could touch would actually turn to gold. Come 2007, these major banks start hemorrhaging money. They're not able to back up the deposits. They start having problems. And we know in 2008 September, Lehman Brothers collapsed. Everything went
Mm.
absolutely crashing down. Those people who thought that they could touch something and turn it to gold, they could not even touch something and turn it to copper, right? So it was just it was completely gone. So when you start in that euphoric atmosphere and you actually start feeling, wow, I am this young 25-year-old kid and I am the greatest and I can really do this and all. It was actually, I was just a speck of dust riding on an extremely large wave that was falsely created by some of the smartest people in the world sitting in one city of the world, which was New York, right? So
Mm.
if you can see that, you have to be smart enough to go to the next question as to why this happened, right? The why is really, really, really critical. So what I understood after shortly after that, let's say in 2009, I understood that short-term euphoria always leads to medium-term anxiety that eventually leads to long-term distress, right? And
Mm.
that's always that's sort of how it happens, and that things are actually cyclic. That and why or how could the smartest people in the world get this absolutely so wrong, right? So if anyone out there has not seen the movie The Big Short, I really recommend them that they should actually go out and see it, especially those people right now who are, let's say, in their mid 20s, just starting out either in family businesses or in some other businesses, or as employees or bankers or lawyers or financiers, insurance, all of these sectors or any other sectors, because everyone, after they get a bit of experience, they're like, okay, I can be an entrepreneur. Let's give it a shot. And some people,
Mm.
actually who can actually take it to the long stretch, they actually become successful business owners. So everyone should go and actually see that, especially for the people that are in their mid 20s, because when the 2008 crisis was happening, they were toddlers, they were less than 10 years old, they really don't know actually what happened, right? So that movie gives you an overall glimpse of actually how greedy the market was, how whatever could actually go wrong went wrong. Nobody actually wanted to be called out a detractor from the system that had been set. It was a river of free flowing cash, apart from a few people that
Mm.
have been shown in that movie, which is very, very realistic, right? So the why is really critical all the time to us. We must always ask that, otherwise we're going to be slaughtered like so many
Mm.
people did at that time.
Yeah, yeah. But I haven't seen The Big Short myself, but I've seen a couple of documentaries about the 2008 crisis. And
Yeah,
here in South Africa, we got a ratings downgrade. We're always getting ratings downgrade, and
yeah,
it was quite interesting to see that the people in charge of these so-called ratings, like S&P and
yeah.
Moody's,
Moody's, yeah,
S&P S&P had a massive they played a massive part in the 2008 crisis, if I'm remembering correctly, because
correct.
they were kind of backing up and giving A gradings to all these loan facilities.
Yeah,
And then the whole market crashed. So
yeah,
they've downgraded South Africa. I think we're subgrade, sub-investment grade now,
yeah,
as an economy. But
right.
do we really take them too seriously? Because look what they did.
Yeah.
They played parts. So why are we taking these ratings agencies so seriously? Is my point in that. But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously the investment grade money that's out there, which is in the billions over billions, yeah, they have obviously set up this infrastructure, this system, right? So they always look at these rating agencies, they go for AAA bonds, AAA assets, and the 2008 financial crisis was a mortgage-backed security crisis, basically. That and
Mm,
the basic premise, if you also see in the movie, was who doesn't pay off their mortgage, right? Everyone pays off their mortgage, and that basic question should have been answered. What if everyone doesn't pay off their mortgage? What is going to happen then? And that's what exactly happened, right? Banks, they
mm,
ended up losing, I think, 70 to 90% of their capital was completely wiped off over the few years from 2007. And I think the market bottomed somewhere in March of 2009, 6 months after Lehman collapsed. So yeah, that was a very harsh lesson. But the problem with harsh lessons is that the generation that went through it only learns it. The next generation actually does not. So the next
mm,
generation now, like I said, people in their mid 20s, or let's say late 20s, who were probably teenagers at the time, they didn't go through that. They need their own pain. And I reckon their own pain is actually setting up right now. And something like that is actually coming once
yeah,
again.
yeah. I'm sure. I mean, there's at least once in a generation that goes through. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, the 2008 was the big one, but I mean, we've had COVID pandemic, which also hit the global economy quite
Yeah.
badly.
Yeah.
And well, we go through some trauma every few years in South Africa because we're
Right.
so volatile. So
Yeah.
it's it's never going to be plain sailing. There's always something. And I don't
Yeah.
know if you've read the book, The Black Swan. It actually
No,
talks about
not yet. Yeah.
these kind of out of left field events that no one
Yeah.
predicts. So yeah, I've derailed this conversation quite
No, it's all right.
spectacularly. So,
That's fantastic. It's all
so
good,
let's
Megan.
let's
All good. Yeah.
let's chat about your career. And obviously you've kind of taken some interesting turns from mechanical engineering and construction, and now you're in the world of crypto and Web3 and AI.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's dive into some of that. From a personal perspective, how do the principles and analytics skills you gained in the construction business inform your approach to the crypto market, especially because it's always evolving?
Yeah. Okay. So while I did my mechanical engineering, one thing that most engineers are looking for is to do things simply, thereby increasing efficiency. That's the whole premise of engineering, right? What tools can we use to do a particular task so that we can do it in the shortest amount of time, spending the least amount of money, getting the most amount of experience, and having the maximum output. That's literally, in a
Mm,
sentence, the essence of engineering, right? My nature being inquisitive about things, and like I said, started in the euphoria of 2006, then going into the global financial crisis there. So the idea was that, okay, what actually happened? Smartest people in the world crashing the market. Okay, so there's something called risk management,
mm,
right? Risk management, you only learn once that risk can affect you adversely. You can read as many books about it, you can go through as many exams as you want, but you don't actually understand risk until it's actually on your neck, because you don't know what sort of person you are until that risk actually makes you realize that, okay, you're going to have a loss actually on this.
mm,
So risk management was something which was very, very critical. And I didn't actually realize that until I saw the crisis unfolding in front of my eyes. Like I said, very lucky to actually having seen that.
Mm,
And then I started to look at the construction sector completely with a different lens, and I realized that I need to know everything what's going on completely in what I'm doing, and having the realization that even after I know everything or try to get to know as much of information in the construction sector as possible, there's still a threat, a possibility, probability, let's say, that things will actually not work out, right? So
mm,
what would so then I was like, okay, from like when I went into the crypto market and I stood with a blank screen in front of me and I said, okay, what was the basis of construction? What is the basis of any construction? It's the blueprint, it's the drawings that we make as engineers, right? Once you have the drawings for a particular service, for a particular section, you can start constructing the building, you can start putting the services inside, you can look at the interaction as to how it is. So I was like, okay, so why did the 2008 financial crisis happen? So it happened basically of the news of the rating agencies that we spoke about. So what was it that people actually weren't probably looking at, and what do I need to look at? I said, okay, blueprints in construction industry directly translates to charting in the crypto industry, the or in any market. It could be a stock market, it could be an index fund, it could be anything whatsoever. So
mm,
I was like, okay, keep it simple. My engineering has taught me keep it simple. I wanted to just keep it simple. So basically everyone either lies, embellishes, or let's say misrepresents things in the news, and they are confident about the known knowns, right? What do you do about the unknown unknowns? What do you do about the
mm,
things that you don't even know, that you don't even know, right? So when you look at a chart, what the beauty of charting is that if today you open the Dow Jones chart, there you can actually go back to the crash of 1929. But would you go back to the newspaper of 1929 to see what was actually floating around at that time? You probably wouldn't. So I got
mm,
the realization, okay, if I'm going to enter this market, I can't be looking at news all the time, or can't be looking at news and basing my let's say trading decisions based on that news. That's something that I actually can't do. So I was like, okay, let's do some research. Always love doing research. So started looking at who's who in the market. What are they actually talking about? Very quickly, or when I say very quickly, like in about a year or so, I filtered down that I can do the research myself based on my objectives, based on my efforts, and everything has to be based on charting and based on technical analysis. So I got to actually learning that. At one point, I was probably like 12 to 13 hours in a day. I was just looking at charting techniques, looking at those influencers who actually taught charting techniques. And that has been my transition from the construction into the crypto, and my basis of how I actually treat the crypto market, how I actually see it, stems completely from the lessons that I learned from the global financial crisis of 2008.
wow. Okay. Now, you say you kind of predictions and that kind of thing. I mean, predictions are I don't even know how to put this. I've recently read a book by Hertz Gigerenzer, and
Yeah,
he kind of said that, like you were talking about the known knowns and the unknown unknowns, and
yep,
that everything always looks clearer in hindsight. And he
yep,
charted the guesswork of some of the major banks, and in the US, if I'm not mistaken.
yep,
Um, and he did a 10-year kind of analysis of what their predictions were, because every year they predict what the market's going to do in the following year.
yep,
And he then asked lay people to do the same thing.
yep,
And he what the findings of the study were basically was that the expert economists were no more accurate than lay people just blindly guessing. So,
absolutely.
because you don't know what is going to influence. So when you are looking at the stuff that you do in the crypto
Yep,
market and you're
yep,
charting everything that you do, I mean, we can maybe just get into a little bit about crypto in the next
sure,
section. But
of course.
when you do what you do in crypto, um, what are you actually factoring in? Because there's so many things that can influence whether it goes up or goes down.
Yeah,
um, how do you kind of factor in these things that the unknown unknowns, if you will?
yeah, yeah. So the way I see life, it's all probability. It's all numbers, right? There's strength in numbers, and we have to actually believe that. So whenever you're looking at any particular charting technique, it always takes into historical actualities in account. When you're listening to news, you actually, as a human being, cannot filter out the inaccuracies that were reported and what were the percentage of those inaccuracies. If I hear a news today on a mainstream media channel, I won't name names, but let's say if I can sort of qualitatively figure out that how much of their reporting is accurate and how much actually is not. But if
Mm.
I base my investment decisions on that, what if a massive event occurs that could be something extremely positive or extremely negative? An influencer tweeted something that made a stock go completely sky high, right? There was actually an example of a company that was in China that was named similar to a crypto project that was coming out. And because one of the influencers was actually marketing that project really well, some of the mainstream influencers on Twitter actually started tweeting about it. And the result of that was the next day when the stock of that same named company opened in China, they were actually up like 20% for
Wow.
doing absolutely nothing except having the same name whatsoever,
Mm.
right? So those are the kind of let's say anomalies that can actually happen. So for me, in terms of my charting techniques, it's always a probability. I know that if I'm going to enter a particular trade at this level, there's always a chance that I can lose money. I'm completely fine with that. I'm completely okay with
Mm.
that. I'm to blame. But if I hear a news and actually put my money on it, as human beings, intuitively we want to blame somebody else. Oh, because you
Mm.
said it, that's why. No, I'm an adult. I take accountability, responsibility for my own actions. So why don't I make my own strategy out of everything
Mm.
that I've understood, everything that I've filtered on? Why don't I make my own strategy and figure out what to do? So for me, it was just the basic motivation to keep it simple, and I understood charting to be that way. And what could give me the most historical significance, and obviously history repeats itself, and we see that also on charts, that the different fractal patterns on the charts, they actually repeat themselves. There are
Mm.
key things that you can actually look at, such as supports and resistances. Not trying to be too technical, but yeah, certain price levels where the stock or the crypto may actually hit over there and then bounce off of there. So I'm very happy to play in those probabilities rather than making myself too complicated, listening to a lot of people around, and I'm not smart enough to ascertain what is noise and what is actually good advice, right? So I rather
Mm.
listen to my own advice rather than listening to somebody else. So that is sort
Yeah.
of the guiding principle, yeah, of
Yeah.
what I thought would actually be a good idea. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah. Like I say, you rely on experts, and experts are there for a reason. But I
yeah,
think that the further, the more you become expert in something, the less you start taking kind of the macro environment
true,
into consideration, and that
true.
then starts uh, affecting what you're predicting, or
Yeah,
your
true.
strategy, or whatever you. So yeah.
Yeah.
It,
Just
it
a
comes
point,
down to that
sorry,
whole
on
generalist versus specialist thing again. Like
yeah,
find the middle ground.
yeah, true. Just a point on the experts. I mean, you eventually will actually figure out that there's nobody that can call themselves an expert. They actually can't, because the attachment that we do to a word called expert is that if that person talks and I listen to that person, intrinsically something valuable or something positive is actually going to happen to me. But like I said,
Mm.
life is a numbers game. It may happen, it may not happen, but if it happens, unfortunately we positively attribute that change to that person's advice, and then we start calling them an expert. And if that person becomes right 10 times out of 10, we quickly start calling him a prophet. And then that
Mm.
person says, yes, what I'm telling you is the word of God. And that's the problem with actually being an expert and getting respect in the industry. And yes, there are people that have been right a lot of times, but most of the big businessmen, billionaires that you see, they will attribute a lot of what they do to hard work, a lot of what they do to be at the right place at the right times, making the right moves that are not available to all of us in terms of opportunity, depending on which geography we are in, which timeline we are in, which
Mm.
market we are in. So thought that the best thing to do is to rely on yourself as much as possible. So at least that way, I have the satisfaction that I'm responsible for my own failures, slap, or I'm responsible for my own success, clap. Right. So
Yeah.
that's So that's sort of the way I look at things.
That's super interesting and very refreshing. because a lot of people, they like to take the credit for when things go right, but when things go wrong.
Yeah.
And I listened to a podcast once, and I cannot remember, so I don't know who to attribute this to, but this person was a Navy SEAL, and they
Correct.
were brought up that everything that goes wrong or right in your life,
Yep.
regardless of extenuating circumstances, is your own
Yeah.
fault. Or,
True.
you have to take accountability for it, because even
True.
if you were influenced by outside factors, or, you can't necessarily help like a cancer diagnosis, but you can,
Yeah.
your response is your responsibility. So
True.
yeah, I found that quite interesting, and
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people. I bring this up. A lot of people disagree with me, but I think that there is some weight in that.
It's completely true, Megan. I completely 101% believe in that. If you do not actually learn accountability yourself, what are you going to pass to the next generation? Because you
Yeah.
absolutely have no idea who you influence. There are people
Mm,
watching you. You could be an inspiration to someone, or you could be an absolutely downgraded individual to someone else, right? So people are always judging. Again, comes to numbers, right? I may be
mm,
99.3% influenced by you. I don't even know it. I'm just putting a number. Or you may be
mm,
65.4% influenced by me. You absolutely don't know it.
mm,
We are not that
yeah.
evolved that we, but that is true. At some level you get
Mm,
influenced by your surroundings. You get, I mean, when you wake up in the morning and make your bed and actually do 3 or 4 chores, like you wake up at 6 and by 7 4 of your chores are done. Imagine how that day would go. Your day would absolutely go fantastic, right? As compared to
yeah.
from 6 to 7 if you were on social media in the morning and
Mm,
you just
mm,
looked at a bit of some TikToks and some laughs and some giggles. That sort of day will not be productive for you at all. So everything in your environment influences you around. So why should I allow experts to influence me? Why can't I be my own expert? Why don't I have the confidence to be my own expert? I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, let's dive a little bit into the actual crypto and NFTs and
Yeah.
Web3.
Yeah.
Maybe you can give us a little bit of an explanation, like a layman's. Always type into ChatGPT. Explain
Yeah.
this as you would to like a 5-year-old. So,
Yeah.
what is the hype between Web3, or the hype of Web3? What is the hype of crypto? Because what I understand crypto to be is essentially just a glorified stock.
Oh.
I don't see it as like a currency.
Yeah.
So that is my kind of Neanderthal brain. That's
Yeah.
the information that I have absorbed.
Right.
And again, we're speaking about being your own expert. We tend to kind of seek out. I think it's called confirmation bias. We
Yeah.
seek out
True.
information that confirms what we already know. So
True.
give us the layman's version of crypto, Web3, NFTs,
Yeah.
why we should care, and maybe throw blockchain in there as well, because that's obviously
Sure.
closely related to crypto.
Definitely. And you'll be getting, so I'm not an expert. I really don't like that word. So yeah, whatever I've understood, I'm just going to try in as simple terms as to explain, because I also understand things very simply. I don't like to delve into
Mm,
the complicated. I'm not a coder, programmer mind at all, right? I'm an
yeah.
engineering mind. Yeah, as soon as I can join the dots, I'm happy with that. I don't go and zoom into the dot to see what it's all about, right? So
Yeah.
before we understand what it actually is, let's get into the why, right? So again, going back to the global financial crisis very quickly, just as soon as that happened, there was an Occupy Wall Street movement. People were
Mm,
on the street in New York City. I think there was like hundreds of thousands of people, and they actually couldn't understand what went wrong, and the normal human tendency of I need to blame someone, right? Then after that, we saw that there were bailouts of banks and insurance companies by the governments because the whole system would have actually collapsed, and this happened after Lehman Brothers, right? That bank collapsed on 15th of September 2008, and I think most of the bailouts happened like within a month or so after that. So what did people actually understand? What did we understand? Now, like you said, hindsight is 2020, but at that time, what did people actually understand? That there's a problem with centralization. We cannot make these big institutions bigger, rich institutions richer, but that's how capitalism is actually, let's say, structured. there
Mm.
was a need for decentralization. Why are people attracted to decentralization, Megan? Is because democracy is decentralized, right? We have this illusion that we have the power, we give our vote to a politician, and then those people come into power. So decentralization was actually the key. What was the other and I'm laying the foundation for crypto in this, right? I'm not just giving a story. So
Yeah,
just
no,
please
sure, sure, sure.
bear with me. Yeah. So decentralization was one thing. The other problem that people had was transparency. The news outlets, the newspapers are all controlled by these megalodons, giants who are controlling the economies of the world, right? And so where is the transparency in that? So people were like, okay, the information that you hooked me on with your YouTube videos, your TV news, your newspapers and magazines and interviews, it all turned out completely false. It all turned out completely rubbish. Why can't I withdraw my own money in a bank? I'm not doing any sort of big investments, complicated things. I'm a simple person. I've got a family of 3 or 4 members. I'm just earning for my kids and for my family. And why can't I withdraw my money? Where is the so transparency was absolutely very much necessary. The next step, the next important point in this was trustlessness. I want a system where trust should not be a factor. Word should not be a factor. Signing a paper shouldn't be a factor. It has to be trustless. And what I'm doing with you, Megan, that has to actually be recorded in a ledger that's visible throughout the network that you and I are connected to,
Mm.
right? So that was the basic essence of Satoshi Nakamoto, what he or they accomplished. So we don't know who he is or who they are, right?
Mm.
It's a name given to the idea, to the concept of the entity that created the white paper for Bitcoin on 31st of October 2008. It was an instant sensation, and basically it de-glorified the concept of having a CEO, having a board, having these trusted systems that need to function in a certain way. It gave away the need for having things done behind a closed door, behind a room. It created an environment of transparency and security in terms of cryptography. So cryptography is basically where the word crypto actually comes in. And again, I want to
Mm.
tell people to actually look at Big Short. They'll actually understand this a lot better after
Mm.
they see the movie. So cryptography is basically a technique. How can I describe it? A technique or an environment created for secure transactions to counteract bad actors or someone with bad behavior, right? This can
Mm.
be a small person in the network that can actually get kicked out, or even a very large bank who is not able to probably enter this network that has been created unless and until they accept the rules that are that have been crafted
Mm.
to run Bitcoin. Now when you say that Bitcoin could be like any other stock. So what actually happens with Bitcoin is completely different to something that, let's say, happens with other metals or other things where there is so much of inflation and it's so expensive that you can't actually get into it. So let's talk about gold. So like 50 years ago, gold was probably I can't remember now. I can look up the chart, but let's just say for argument's sake, $15 an ounce or $20 an ounce. Right today, I think it's like $2,000 an ounce. So
Mm.
in the 1970s, when somebody was 25 years old, they could probably get into it. Today, when somebody has to buy an ounce of gold in as soon as they get out of college, not so easy, right? So that point has basically been thought of in Bitcoin, where the supply of Bitcoin gets halved every 4 years. That's actually called halving, right? So Bitcoin started with a certain amount of supply that Bitcoin can actually be mined, and then in 2012 that supply was halved. In 2016 that was further halved. In May of 2020 it was further halved, and I think in the next 6 months is the next halving event. I think that's the fourth halving event. So the supply of Bitcoin, so scarcity was built into this asset that is going to be scarce. And like you said, it's not meant to be a currency. It's not meant to be an entity that is supposed to be transacted to carry out a transaction. Let's say it's meant to be a store of value. It's meant to be a treasury. It's meant to be a vault, actually. And based on this vault, businesses can run their operations. They can give it as collateral eventually in future to crypto banks that will actually give you tangible money based on this as a security. It was never meant to replace currencies. I think that's a very big misconception that people have. It's
Mm.
supposed to be, yeah. So I would definitely encourage people to go and look at the big giants who actually hold Bitcoin and look at their social media accounts and their commentary on this. You'll actually see that Bitcoin is supposed to be some sort of a treasury that entities, companies, people can actually hold and then borrow against that entity. Exactly how you would, let's say, do with your house. Your house is an asset once it's completely paid off, and then you can actually mortgage that house, and you can borrow money for expenses. You can borrow money for financing a business. You can borrow money and you can purchase, let's say, shares or stocks against it, and you can pledge your stocks as well. So it's at that level where Bitcoin is actually going to function in the future.
Okay. Why did they call it Bitcoin then if it's not really a currency?
That was so. So the advent of Bitcoin was probably, you can put it up to World War II in 1940s, when Alan Turing and his entire team were, let's say, given the task of decoding the German Enigma machine, which
Mm,
was basically used as a cryptography tool for encrypting all of their communications, their transactions. So that probably was the birth of computers, and that, along with the birth of computers, the idea that something had to be created in a cryptographic manner, transacted in a manner that it's encrypted, cannot be decoded by normal people unless they actually have a key, right?
mm,
So
mm.
that is probably from where it started. So a bit, 8 bits is a byte. So I think bit was probably I could be wrong, but that's how I understand it. That they want it to be the most fundamental thing that's actually out there, right?
Okay.
Like an atom, an electron, a proton, something really fundamental. So that is where bit came
Mm,
from. And I think coin is the word where you basically can confuse that it's actually a currency, right? But yeah, it was just something that was chosen, the name was put together. But yeah, like I said, it's not meant to be a currency whatsoever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Bitcoin is traded. Well, I say traded, but it's not really traded, I suppose. But it's on the blockchain.
Yeah.
So the blockchain obviously serves as a ledger, and it
Yeah.
provides that transparency and all that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
it's now moving away from kind of just this thing that has to do with Bitcoin, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding that Bitcoin and blockchain are the same thing. I mean, they're really
Yeah.
interrelated, and they can't. The one well, Bitcoin can't exist without the blockchain, but
True.
blockchain can exist without Bitcoin.
True.
So, do you want to maybe just give us the same kind of high level overview, fifth grader explanation of blockchain?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, like the name suggests, it's basically a chain of blocks. Each block that's actually created has data inside it, and the size of the blocks that's actually there, it's very specific as to how much data can actually be input basically into it. And then you have these blocks connected. That's why it is basically a chain. It's as simple as that. Bitcoin is
Mm,
one kind of chain. I think today, if you look at coin market cap, I think there's more than 25,000 or 26,000 projects that are actually out there, and all of them claim to be that they are on some sort of a blockchain network that's actually out there. Now, you have some of these that have different applications, such as one blockchain can interact with the other. That is where transactions actually happen. And you have chain manipulation as well, that where, let's say, some of the nodes that are actually bad, the whole network decides that these blocks will not be included in the chain, so they can actually fork out, and you can have things like soft forks and hard forks, where the backbone that is actually good, that actually continues into a new chain. So it's like railway tracks,
mm,
right? So the track down the road is actually it's actually broken. So then we have to construct a new track out over there. So that, in a very, let's say, layman's view, is what blockchain is actually all about. The entire set of blocks that's there, the whole network is able to see it, the whole network is able to view it, and all the transactions that are actually recorded on the ledger, they can actually be tracked online. So if you have, let's say if I give you a transaction and you have my wallet address, you have your own wallet address, and let's say it's the Ethereum blockchain, so you can go
Mm.
to etherscan.io, I believe. You can go over there and you can actually put my wallet address to see a particular transaction that's actually come to you, and whether it has come to you or not, and how long it's actually going to take. So there are people, there are let's say nodes on the network that have to actually confirm the transaction to say that yes, my address actually belongs to an ERC20 address on the Ethereum blockchain, yours is too, and the transaction can actually happen between both of them. If we put the wrong wallet addresses, for example, transaction will not happen and that money will be lost in outer space, which happens quite regularly. So
Oh, wow.
it's yeah, it's sequenced in blocks, information is in there. Transactions can happen extremely quickly, like just to give you an advantage of a blockchain network, if somebody has to transfer 20 bitcoins worth of money, which is today close to like $500,000, if they have to transfer in over the Bitcoin network, it'll take a few minutes and it's actually done,
Mm.
right? But if
Yeah.
I sitting in Kuwait have to if I have to transfer through a bank $500,000 to you in South Africa, I'm going to be called by my bank, I'm going to be called by authorities, I have to give proof of where I earned this money from, what I blah 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 blah. And then when you get the money, you probably were happier without the money, right? Because once you get the
Yeah.
money, the authorities in South Africa are going to call you, who's Sachin, why is he transacting with you, and all of that. So the blockchain technology gets rid of this um, middle, let's say, entities that are more adversarial than supportive, right?
Mm.
I can directly I have a wallet, you have a wallet, I have Bitcoin, you need it, you give me fiat or you give me some other token. Let's say I give you Bitcoin in exchange for any other token that's out there, right? Which could be BNB, for example. So you give me BNB, I
Mm.
give you Bitcoin. Your transaction to me happens on the BNB blockchain, my transaction to you happens on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's so simple. So that simplicity and that the fees that's actually there. So if I do a $500,000 transaction to you sitting from Kuwait to South Africa, maybe my bank will charge me 3%. And then I lose
Mm.
on the exchange rate as well. Maybe the South African rand devalues or
Mm.
goes up in value against the Kuwaiti dinar where I am, right? So all those risks are taken out by Bitcoin. So if I transact with you or if I transact with a person in El Salvador, if a person in Canada, Bitcoin remains Bitcoin at the end of the day, right? So we have to look at it from that value of Bitcoin and not look at it as to what Bitcoin is worth today in dollars. It's that Bitcoin.
Mm.
20 years later, if I have zero point 0.1 Bitcoin in a wallet, it'll remain zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. But 20 years down today, if I have $1,000 in my account, 20 years later, with that $1,000, I probably can buy like maybe a pair of shoes. Like today, I can buy
Mm.
20 pair of or 10 pair of shoes, let's say with $1,000. But yeah, so that devaluation that happens in fiat currency, the devaluation is not actually there, and that is basically the essence of having Bitcoin on a blockchain.
Okay. Now, we're talking about decentralizing and all that kind of thing, and I know decentralized finance. I've written quite a lot of content on courses, for economists to look into or to study decentralized finance and see its
Yeah,
impact.
yeah,
Now, just to kind of loop that back, you
yeah,
mentioned that democracy and capitalism, etc. I don't
yeah,
know if any country in the world is actually democratic because you cast your vote and essentially the winning party becomes an autocracy for 4 years or 5 years. There's not
true,
really, our current government doesn't necessarily represent my specific interests, which is
true,
what I understand a democracy to be. So anyway,
right,
um, you decentralize. Let me just rewind quickly. So you've got governments in charge. They have regulations. Regulations are there to obviously regulate the flow of money and make sure that it's not all going to where it shouldn't be going. But
yeah,
you've now got this voted for autocracy controlling the purse strings and
yeah,
and putting those regulations in place.
yeah,
Decentralized finance, for example, now takes care of that. They get rid of all of that regulation. But is that not a problem in terms of like corruption and people doing dodgy things on the dark web? regulation has been put in place, obviously, to kind of try and limit those things. So
Yeah.
where does the where's the balance between getting rid of so much regulation
Yeah.
and actually being able to transact freely versus like complete chaos and bedlam?
Yeah. Right. So that's a very good question actually. So okay. So from let's first talk about an individual level, then we'll talk about a community level, right? So from an individual level, I first have to figure out what am I trying to actually achieve as being part of the decentralized finance network, right? So I'll give you a bit of my background. So I actually come from a village in India, and where a lot of my extended family members are, and that village is not very well developed. It's a village of about 5,000 people. Most of them are, let's say, my extended family. So for me, somebody who has that privilege of understanding all these concepts and being in this market, right, what does decentralized finance do for me directly? Decentralized finance, particularly for me, would probably just mean a few transactions that I do, and in the framework that is existing today. So I go on a decentralized exchange like Coinbase or Binance. I can open my account anywhere, and then I do a couple of transactions with somebody else who's there, or I do some trading, which could be day trading, swing trading, long-term trading, investing trading, whatever. But what is the deeper picture for somebody like me? I can actually use decentralized finance, and I can take this to the entire village that's actually over there. We don't have a bank in our village. We have to go to the next village, which is much bigger, has 10,000 people. That's where a government bank is. The government has not
Mm,
even opened a bank directly in my own village, right? So for me, at a personal level, decentralized finance is a great understanding. It's a great concept to understand, and it can be used to do certain transactions. But I, as a person who can actually, let's say, encourage others to join this system, it can actually empower people at the grassroots level, right? And
mm,
in India, that's actually happening now. You have these small street vendors, and they have a QR code, and then you scan your phone, and then immediately money is transferred from the account of a person eating a plate of food, and that money is directly going to the other person's account, right? Straight away. It's like contactless pay completely. So the essence of all this new technology has to be, at the end of the day, to help the poor people who don't have that much education, opportunities, knowledge, or the time to actually sit and read and understand all of this. Because for them, it's like, okay, today I had food for my family, where am I going to get food tomorrow, right? So
mm,
like you said, and I also believe that government, of course, helps you to a certain extent by continuing on the infrastructure, continuing on the facilities that were actually provided by the previous governments. But in many cases, if an opposition government comes, they try to undo and unravel a lot of good
mm,
and bad, whatever the previous government has actually done. So what actually happens in this scenario is that we have to realize that we are responsible for ourselves also. And obviously a big part of that has to be gratitude. You give back to the community, and you actually teach them, you actually tell them, look, it's very easy to actually do this. And from a farming point of view, let's just say that this can also actually be done, where you can actually bring the market to a vendor, and the vendor, who's a farmer, can actually sell his produce directly to the market that's come to his doorstep, instead of appointing him a smaller middleman who sells to a bigger middleman, who sells to a wholesaler, who goes to a retailer, and then by the time the money crawls down to the farmer, he gets like 25 cents on the dollar,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, so we have to, at the end of the day, understand that I've had the privilege of traveling quite a lot in the world, so I've actually seen poverty very closely, right? My father
Mm,
started from very humble beginnings as well, so I have that sense that, okay, I'm learning all of this, of course, to teach my own children. So I have 4 kids, so I obviously want to teach them, but at the same time take this message also to those people who really will never have the opportunity that I had in my life.
mm, mm. Awesome. Um, we're gonna change gears here,
Yeah.
because we went down a really random rabbit hole there. So I'm going to change, and let me just say that the conversation got quite heavy there. So
Yeah.
let's change gears. So from your experience as a content creator, it
Yeah.
spans from creating kind of digital content like websites and
Yeah.
documents to I think you've even dabbled in stuff like NFTs.
Yep.
So how do you see the nature of content creation changing in this Web3 ecosystem? And
All right.
obviously, like AI is like coming in, generative AI
Yeah.
is coming into this picture as well now. So
Oh yeah.
how do you see it changing in the kind of near future?
Right. So let's quickly delve into Web 2, right? The problems that were there actually with Web 2. So Web 2 basically is a platform like YouTube, right? There are people that are creating, let's say, content, and we are actually consuming. So there's a clear difference between those people who actually have the tools, the will, the ideas to actually create content, and then most of the people are actually consumers. The problem
Mm,
with that, eventually what happens is that there is a high entry barrier basically to that, and the content creators and the content seekers are, let's say, influenced or at the mercy of the platforms that they actually use. And let's say a particular channel that's there on YouTube that doesn't, let's say, align with certain policies, or let's say starts creating content that drifts in the direction that the platform doesn't want, they can get deplatformed very easily, as we saw in the 2020 presidential election when that was actually
mm,
happening at the time. Many of known names, known faces, without taking names, they actually got deplatformed. Data security is another concern that is there with Web 2 platforms. Copyrights is another concern. So what actually is happening in the Web 3 platform, right? So the keywords there basically are, let's say, data protection, there's data security, there's a decentralized management of identity, right? So the Web3 network actually knows exactly who you are, what assets you have actually created. Those assets have your, let's say, watermark on there, and you are you can I mean, the asset ownership can actually easily be tracked over the NFT blockchain that's actually out there, which is why the Web3 and NFT industry is has seen a rise of digital art, digital collectibles. There's even digital real estate. There's
mm,
obviously a need also that the creator who has actually created this is, without having a middle person, getting maximum value for the concept that they have created or for the portfolio which they have actually created. So that gives a lot of clarity in terms of copyrights. It gives clarity in terms of who is the real owner, and you can convert real world assets actually into non-fungible tokens, which are NFTs, and you can actually trade them across that network in a very, very secure way. Again, cryptography comes into the picture. It's a blockchain, it's recorded forever. And imagine creating a Web3 platform where content creators and content seekers, I actually did a white paper for a client on this. So you can have a platform where you can have content seekers and content creators actually onboarded onto that platform, right?
mm.
And that platform allows both of them to actually interact with each other directly, and they are the whole giving of quotations and purchase orders and deliverables and time tracking and everything is tracked actually on a blockchain on that platform. So you very quickly sort out the non-performing actors versus the ones who actually want to perform. Now compare
Mm.
this to something like Fiverr or something like Upwork, where there's such a high entry barrier for somebody who's new, where your career there can't actually progress if you don't have reviews, if you don't have 5 stars on everything, and that could actually be such a big problem. So these are some sort of challenges that Web3 actually takes care of. And I would say the last one is a collaboration spirit, because there's so much of transparency on this, and the person actually putting in the effort knows that they actually cannot get the short end of the stick when it comes to getting fair value for the content that they actually create.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you mentioned copyright, and obviously now with Gen AI or generative AI, the copyrights and licensing and all that kind of thing starts coming into play because generative AI, most of them scrapes the internet, and when you ask it to write something, not it's not necessarily plagiarism because it's not copying word for word, but it's generating that content based on its knowledge that it's been trained on, which is sometimes copyrighted content.
Yep.
So, in terms of content creation on Web3, is this all going to kind of be taken care of? You mentioned that the Web3 is kind of weeding out that kind of issue, but
Yeah,
I mean, like OpenAI has discontinued, if I'm open to correction here, but I believe
yeah,
that
yeah,
they've discontinued their has this been written by AI
yeah.
tool. So how is this all factoring into copywriting? Is Gen AI going to eventually be phased out of of content creation? How I mean, it's kind of a mess at the moment in terms of
Yeah.
AI, Gen AI, content creation, copyright issues, ethical use of AI, all of that kind of thing. So how do you see this developing in future?
Right. Okay.
That was a
So
very, very garbled question. Sorry, I hope that you got
no,
the
no,
gist
it's
of it.
I completely understand. Yeah, yeah, no. So the keywords over here that we want to actually understand are when content creators are creating content, who has the ownership? Is this content actually can it be shared under fair use norms? Right? Is it in the private domain or public domain? What would be the licensing required in order to publish this content? What sort of permissions would the author give to others? Therefore, just as an example, you're going to put up this podcast on your YouTube channel. If I want to
Mm,
request you that I want to put this up on mine, I obviously have to ask you, right? And
mm,
it has to be in form of a documentation, and we're going to sign it, and it's going to be all of that. And we have trust that you're a good actor. I'm also a good actor, right? So that trustworthiness has to be there in a generic system, right?
mm,
And when we talk about Gen AI, then we are obviously concerned about plagiarism. We're concerned about attribution of sources. We're concerned about, okay, are there any norms and regulations, or let's say legal precedents that's been created in order to attribute exactly where this actually came from? Because this could actually, let's say, take pieces of 20 paintings and put it together, right? And
mm,
these paintings could be a Van Gogh, it could be a Vinci, it could be, Picasso, it could be anyone, right? And you
mm,
put all of that together, and that could actually sell for, let's say, $100 million. Then what do we do then? So
mm,
there are ethical considerations with AI, definitely, for sure. I definitely feel that regulations will come out. I think recently the US has proposed to creating an agency that is particularly going to look at artificial intelligence and its networks. So
mm,
that agency has to definitely get developed. As normally, what happens in the world, whatever the US is doing, the whole world then tries to copy it. The second one is the European Union. I think after that, will be the African Union, and the Asian countries will actually come over. So everyone towards when it comes to ethical use of generative AI and the regulations, everyone is looking towards the United States to actually take lead in this. So yeah, when it comes to Gen AI, we obviously have to have the same rules that we understand as a democracy, right? So it has to be obviously decentralized. Ownership has to be very clear, and if one owner is changing to the other on the blockchain, it has to be clearly secured that the creator was number one, and then it has gone through 10 owners. Now it's with the 11th owner, and what is the fair use actually of this? Is a licensing fee there for this? All those contractual obligations have to definitely get sorted out when it comes to generative AI. The most important one being ethical considerations that have to be written down eventually into legal precedents.
yeah, yeah. Now, when it comes to Gen AI, I mean, we're not going to go into kind of model decay and all that kind of thing. But generative AI has basically taken over the internet. People are using it
Yeah.
as uh, which is not what I don't believe that it was created for, you know, please write a 5,000 word blog on X and it spits out this thing. So
Yeah.
I don't, but that's what people are using it for, and they're
Yeah.
using it very much to create content and for their content media, their social media platforms, etc. And
Yeah.
you can start seeing, because you can like if you say please write me a LinkedIn post, there's a
Yeah.
specific format that it follows. I mean, you can spot AI generated content,
Oh yeah.
but
A mile away.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
but now, just to kind of link this back to something that you were saying about you've developed this kind of sixth sense to discern fact from like fiction, I suppose, fact from alternative fact. to use modern day terminology. But you say in your LinkedIn profile that you are very much about the importance of being updated daily on the happenings in the crypto world through various social media platforms.
Yeah,
Um, how are you kind of navigating this world of AI created content? Like, how do you discern credible information from the noise,
yeah,
especially in a market like crypto because it's very volatile?
yeah.
So, with people using Gen AI to create ever devolving content in terms of its value, how are you kind of discerning the fact from the alternative facts?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, the comment regarding sixth sense. So, my sixth sense only works for me. I'm not a preacher at all to anybody else.
Yeah, sure, 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 sure.
I'm pretty sure everyone has their own sixth sense that they must actually use. I completely trust my sixth sense, right? Because I feel
Mm,
that it completely works for me. Now, when it comes to actually looking at good reliable content versus the content that actually would be just garbage. So good judgment comes after a lot of bad judgment, right? So it it happens that to me as well, that that good judgment came after losing a lot of money, right, by listening to some other people. And that basically came down to two simple action points. Number one, record everything that you feel has some sort of value that you can extract the juice out of. And secondly, create a system that is based on your values, because at the end of the day, anyone that is an accomplished trader that you will listen to, I'm not actually one of them. I'm an amateur trader, but accomplished traders who actually do $50 to $100,000 worth of trades in a day, or even more if they're part of an institution. They will
mm,
actually tell you that if you make $20,000 on a trade, don't be happy. If you lose $20,000 on a day on a trade, don't be sad, right? You have to keep your
mm,
temperament completely flat. And that's sort of how I keep my temperament, not only when I'm trading, but also when I'm looking at news, right? So I'm able
mm,
to actually see, okay, this person is actually not giving the information that I'm looking for. This person is giving me the information that I'm looking for. So I actually went through more than 300 influencers over the last 5 years that I've actually listened to, or accepted, or listened to and deleted, right? And I don't go back to
mm,
them actually again. So there is no shortcut formula. It is a lot of hit and trial. It's a little bit like Edison found 2000 ways how not to make filament of a bulb. It's a little bit like that.
mm,
You have to just go through the whole process yourself. And then the entire market is of course volatile, but it is how you handle that volatility. For example, if
mm,
there was a crypto market crash that happened in March of 2020, the black swan event of COVID-19. It was the 13th of March early
mm,
morning in Kuwait. It was the 12th March evening in the US. And there a bitcoin actually was, I think if I remember, in the third week of February, it was at $10,500. It crashed down to like $3,800. So people who are not actually prepared to put money when it actually happens at that time, they of course miss out, but they have to learn from that experience, right? But people who
mm,
actually ended up putting money at that time, from March of 2020 till April of 2021, Bitcoin went from $3,750 to $64,000. On the 12th of April
mm,
2021, it was at 64,000. I think somewhere in the first week of November, it was at 69,000. So you
mm,
have to obviously have a system. You have to record everything down, because you have information bias in your brain, right? New
mm,
information is
mm.
like the new layer of paint over old information. New information could be as brown as shit, but old information could be so valuable that you actually yourself are sabotaging your own thinking by painting new shit, oh sorry for this, but over the old paint that was actually completely as valuable as gold, right? So the 2 points over here for
Mm,
me are, obviously, you have to get the experience. You have to note down all your experiences. And if you have to note down your experiences, you have to be updated daily. You have to go to those news channels, or to go to those media outlets that actually talk about it. Spend 5 to 10 minutes. In about 10, it takes about 1.5 2 hours in a day. Note down your points, compare it to what was there. And the beauty is that if I have 5 years of points, I can take it to something like Chat GPT and say summarize everything, and actually
mm,
filter out the points that I have actually focused over the last 5 years, which you intuitively would never know as well, right?
mm,
You
mm.
go you can actually ask a large language model to actually filter that out for you, and then you know that your top 10 points that you actually care about, which help you to become a better trader, or at least a better engager in the crypto industry.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I feel that strategy can work for anything that you're trying to better in your life.
Sure.
And just on that note, ChatGPT. My favorite thing to do in ChatGPT is take like a bulk text and say, "Put this into tabular form." It is that is
Oh
like a game.
man.
That is a game changer. It just
Yeah.
simplifies information so freaking quickly that you're
Yeah.
not trawling through like white papers and that kind of thing to find information. It's just you
Yeah.
chuck this information and say put it in tabular form, and it
Yeah.
spits out like the most amazing summary. It is like
That's true.
it's a game changer.
Yeah, true, true. And
Um,
even other tools that actually use live data, they are much better than ChatGPT. So yeah, there's so many tools out there now that are really changing the world of content creation. And not only for us, that even for my kids. My daughter, for
mm,
example, if she has to write an essay on something related to India, she just goes to ChatGPT. I told her, don't bother about searching in Google and all of that. Go to something like ChatGPT. Just ask it the question, let it come out, and then
mm,
verify those facts from Google. And she does that. And she's 12 years old and she's using ChatGPT. So these
yeah,
tools are even for kids. Yeah, and that's totally
no,
fine that they use it. Yeah,
it's crazy. But let's maybe jump into that because you
yeah,
do have kids.
yeah,
I have to still let me put it this way. When my grandparents were alive, I had to program their VCR, and whenever there was
yeah,
a power outage and the time kind of was deleted and the power
yeah,
came back on and there was the little flashing zeros on the VCR, then I would have to drive all the way to their house to reset the time on the
yeah.
VCR.
Right.
Now kids are like at the age of 2 are able to navigate a smartphone like better than I can. And
Yeah,
I use my smartphone all the time. So
yeah,
the newer generations coming up adapt to the technology super
yeah,
quickly. But
yeah,
technology, I believe that humans are not evolving quick enough to keep up with the evolution of tech. So
yeah,
if you have got kids, let's structure this question in two parts. If you've got kids, how are you preparing your kids for the future with all this tech? And then, as a set in your ways adult, how can you kind of evolve faster to keep up with these changes in tech? Because, like, soon your kids will be out trading you on crypto and they will know more about blockchain, and they adopt new tech a lot quicker than people that I like my comfort zone
yeah,
in terms of tech. And I'm using AI a lot now in terms of content creation, but
yeah,
it took me a while to get to that level. And the next innovation is going to come in, and I will be a slow adopter to that as well. So,
yeah.
how do you prepare your kids? And then how do you, as an adult, kind of fast track your evolution to keep up with the changes in tech?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the number one thing has to be uh, that you have to be inquisitive about everything. You have to keep learning, right? Even somebody who is even 75 years old, they have to believe that there's something new that they can learn. Obviously, because the world that they were born in versus the world that they educated themselves in versus the world that they first start working in is completely different today as compared to
Mm,
50, 60, 70 years ago, depending on their age. So I think the most important thing to teach the children is to be inquisitive, to keep asking the why, to keep learning something new every day. Like go out and observe something, write it down, draw it down, make a sketch, anything, record it, and attribute your effort by obviously either posting it online, creating a digital record of it, which is very important that children actually should learn about it so that they can actually understand that the effort that went into this, the glory that comes from that effort, it belongs to them. That's very
mm,
important. And as far as learning technology is concerned, for us adults, we have to just constantly keep learning, keep ourselves updated completely. We have to be completely flexible that the things that we probably learned in our lifetime, that something could be incorrect, there's always something better out there. We have to always, like how we change our clothes, we always have to be able to throw it out from our mind and try to go on the journey of learning something completely new. There's so much of
mm,
inspiration around us that people that are much older than us, example, the guy who started KFC, he found success at the age of 66, right? Ray Kroc,
mm,
the owner of McDonald's. You go to any McDonald's, you see a plaque on the wall saying about Ray Kroc. He was like broke and dusted literally, and at the age of 54, he bought. He started the company, franchised it out, bought it out from the original brothers in 1961, and you can even look at the movie The Founder, right? A lot of inspiration over there. So we have to always figure out that we have to be self-inspired. First of all, we have to learn, and we have to keep that inspiration up, and then we have to transfer those values to our kids so that very quickly they can adopt technology, because with technology they will actually learn ways how to make money, which used to be a taboo in a lot of households in the 80s and 90s. So the kids who actually grew up, they probably did not get that much of financial education from their parents. In my case, I got zero financial education from my parents. Whatever
Mm,
I learned. Like, money was never discussed, if whether it was less, whether it was more, how it was coming, where it was coming. I mean, I think I was up to the age of 15 or 16. I had no clue where my father worked. Actually, there was no discussion. Work was left at work. Home was different. So I don't want that to be repeated to my kids. So I teach them about money. I teach them about the value of things, and they obviously don't get the things that they want immediately. So they of course have to start questioning, why didn't daddy give me those things, what's going on? So I'm just trying
mm,
to inculcate that value of why, being inquisitive, being learning. And you have to be humbled by the fact that a single brain in this world today doesn't even know 0.00001 of actually what's happening. For example, if we have to talk
mm.
about what's happening inside the stomach of a fish, we have absolutely no clue what chemical, physical, biological processes, just as an example, right, what's actually going on inside. We have no clue what enzymes, what proteins, what things actually happen. And of course, somebody who's actually studied it would obviously know about it, but us as laymen, we would not. So be inquisitive,
Yeah.
be inspired, transfer that to your kids. That's probably the best way to advance your own thinking and also to develop your kids.
Mm. Is that something you think about a lot, Session? Is what happens inside the stomach of a fish? Because you were very, very quick to come up with that example.
Just as just a random example, if I talk about physics or chemistry, there's so many examples. Like, what are the details of what actually happens inside a cloud? Right,
Mm,
how does actually lightning occur, just as an example? So how does a blade of grass actually, how does a seed actually convert into a tree? So
mm,
many things that we actually don't know, but we have to be inquisitive. You are inquisitive, you get the answers, and you teach your kids, and you teach the
yeah.
society around you that's probably not as privileged as you, like I spoke before.
Mm, mm. Amazing. Cool. We've been going for quite a while, so
Yeah.
I'm going to end off the conversation with a quick fire round, 5 quick
Okay.
questions.
Right.
The first one isn't really a question; it's more of a challenge. So tell me something I don't know about AI or crypto or technology, something in your very vast field of expertise, and just you don't have to even aim for the stars because even though I work with AI and stuff, like you say, there's literally no way that you can know everything. So go.
Okay. So let's talk about the crypto industry. There are actually less scammers in the crypto industry as compared to the ones that are running our government.
Oh wow. Is there a source to back up that stat?
It's another podcast, Megan. Believe me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
well, let's steer away from politics.
yeah,
I've already stood on my soapbox already in this episode. So let's move swiftly along. Question number 2: is there a
yeah,
specific routine or thing you do
yeah.
that you believe contributes to your success?
Oh yeah. Always remain curious. Question everything. Do not believe something that you simply hear.
Hmm. Awesome.
Yeah,
That's great advice,
yeah,
especially in the world of social media where it's
yeah.
I don't know if you had it in Kuwait, but here in South Africa during COVID, people were drinking something called ivermectin, which is like a it's an anti-parasitic for horses. And
Wow.
someone on Facebook started this thing that ivermectin can cure COVID, and
Yeah,
there was this entire black market trade of ivermectin in South Africa. So yeah, it was insane, and there's no scientific proof at all that it actually worked.
yeah.
But it's someone
True.
saw. So yeah, always question
Yeah,
where the
true.
source of your information is coming from.
Yeah, and then we had Sweden, where I think there was like no deaths. I think related to COVID, they had no vaccine mandates, nothing. I think in Sweden, if I remember, a lot of people had actually shifted there. So completely different, right? Where people actually can
Yeah.
get, yeah, completely influenced and take something that they are not real, that they don't really need to, versus a country that says, look, yeah, we know exactly what this is, and yeah, we're going to do this about it, and yeah, they just went about their business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Herd immunity. I think they were quite big on as soon as it became they didn't actually go into lockdown. They
No.
said let's all go to the park together and infect
Yeah.
each other and then yeah, I mean that was the best strategy in hindsight, but
Yeah.
yeah.
True. Yeah.
Cool. Question 3, what do you do when you're not working? Like I see emails coming from you and IMs from like all hours of the night and all weekend on in
Yeah.
my emails. So um, I don't think you ever are not working, but in that
True.
5 seconds, I think before you fall asleep at night, maybe.
Yeah. So I'm always reading. I have either a religious text near me or something that really inspires me, authors that actually inspire me. So I don't read any fiction whatsoever. I've never have, because I don't see the value in taking some inputs from a story that's not real. So either I would be reading or I really enjoy cooking. So I would probably be cooking something in my free time and always listening to music.
Awesome. If on that note, if all the books in the world suddenly spontaneously combusted except one, what would it be and why?
Okay. It has to be Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. That book
Mm,
actually changed my life completely. It taught me a lot about finance, and it speaks to you in such a simple way. And you can actually read it if you're 15 years old. You can read it if you're 65 years old. It's completely relevant. It's a timeless classic, and it actually really connects with those people who are very curious to learn about money, but they don't have the environment or the setup or the motivation to actually go and search and ask the right questions. Now we see with ChatGPT, for example, you give the right prompts, you get the right answer. What are those right prompts?
mm,
Right? So this sort of triggers your mind by giving you the right prompts related to financial education. So if that one
mm.
book actually remains, we can probably have some hope that yes, the civilization will, let's say, develop based on the principles that are outlined there.
Awesome. Final question. I know that you're self-employed. I know that you are kind of quite tied up with Goodman Lantern, but you've obviously got you're self-employed. I mean, you're on contract and that kind of thing. So, what one
Yeah.
piece of advice do you wish you'd received when you started your journey of self-employment?
Uh, I think to trust my inner voice. A lot of times we don't actually give a lot of credit to that. There's so much of self doubt that's actually around, and that self doubt
Mm,
multiplies if we hear somebody else give us a comment that we are actually swimming around within our head. So trusting the inner voice is absolutely critical in no matter whatever we do, whether it's self-employed, whether it's being an entrepreneur and owning a millions of dollars worth of business with hundreds of people around you. So yeah, that I think on a broader point, trusting the inner voice is something that I didn't do when I was younger,
mm.
and now is that's something that I had to learn the hard way, and now I do it.
Yeah, yeah. I think inner voice, it's something that needs to develop as well through, like you say, you have to fail before you succeed. I
Yeah,
think that
true,
you need to develop that inner voice. But I
true,
mean, if you're not experimenting and doing stuff and not learning from your experiences, your inner voice,
true.
your intuition is going to be undeveloped.
Yeah, true. I mean, it I think also comes from something you're born with, obviously, and the environment that's been created for you. That has to be filled with confidence all the time, right?
Mm,
So if you don't actually come from that environment and you have to like literally like struggle and climb the mountain with your teeth, then yeah, it does take a lot of time. But yeah, many people are quite blessed to have a very good, confident, motivational environment that they actually grow up in and they
mm.
actually work in. So yeah, those people could find it early. But yeah, at some point in life, everyone has to find their inner voice.
Yeah,
That's very
yeah.
important. Yeah,
I've just recently read, and funny enough, this is something that I've always said. I've always said, if you need to make a decision, you should do it by flipping a coin, because as the coin is in the air, you know intuitively which side you want the coin to land on. And
correct.
I've actually just read something recently that is the perfect way to actually start developing your intuition is
Yeah,
to make decisions by flipping a coin, because you
yeah,
don't have to look at the coin once it lands, but while
yeah,
it's in the air,
yeah,
and that's a great way of actually developing that inner voice. So
yeah.
yeah,
True,
random.
true. No, true. That's completely right. That's completely right. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you at the end, the message is you have to do what works for you, but you have to develop that system.
Mm,
You have to write it down. It cannot be oh, it's all in my head. There are very
Mm,
few gifted people who can play chess without actually looking at a chessboard, right? So 99.9% of people are not like that. Those geniuses
yeah,
are
yeah.
at another level. But yeah, we have to definitely listen to our inner voice and record everything down and then review it from time to
Mm,
time.
awesome. Session, this has been freaking amazing. I could have carried on,
Thank
but
you.
this has gone way longer than most of the episodes that I do. Where can people get hold of you? I know you've got a YouTube channel. Obviously you're on LinkedIn as well. Where
Yeah,
I'll put all the links in the show notes. But
right.
where can people find you?
I think LinkedIn would be definitely the best. My YouTube channel that's there, it's more in development along with my kids. So they give me a topic and I put up a video there. So obviously, the more serious things, the more serious discussions happen on LinkedIn. That would be the best place to contact me.
Okay, fantastic. And yeah, I think that we probably need to do this again because I sent you the scope of what I'd like to discuss, and I think we only covered about half of it, and we went down some quite interesting rabbit holes. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that there's going to be another podcast in our
thank you.
future.
Definitely. I absolutely loved this, really enjoyed. Sorry for taking so long to explain a few things, but hopefully your viewers will find great value from this. And yeah, I would love to absolutely come back and to discuss more topics with you, Megan. I always
Perfect.
enjoy your
Um,
company.
Yeah, ditto session. And please never apologize. I love talking to you. So this has
Thank
been
you.
fun. And yeah, we'll catch up on the AI work that we do together. So
Sure. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you so
perfect.
much,
Chat
Megan.
soon, session.
Cheers.
Alrighty,
Take care.
cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.